Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Okay, Fischer has just played Queen takes g4, and Unzicker now played f6, which Fischer gave a question mark, pointing out that while this eliminates potential pressure along the h-file, it also weakens black's e-pawn, here at e5, after g takes f6, and bishop takes f6. And now he immediately started activity on the queen side and was striving to open the position for this bishop pair that he's got now. And there's no b takes a4 because of bishop takes a4 winning the exchange. And what Unzicker did play was knight b6. So then came a takes b5, a takes b5, and bishop e3. Fischer writes, because both flanks are fluid, White, with his two bishops, is better able to penetrate and exploit the loose pawns. Unzicker played rook a8. If instead knight c4, then bishop b3, and this is an awkward pin for black to break without getting doubled pawns. So rook a8, now rook e d1. And here another interesting comment from Fischer. If he swaps, then white gains the A file. If he doesn't, then white keeps the D file. Simple but very effective approach. Play continued king h8 and b3, preventing knight c4, and bishop g7. Fischer gave the alternative rook takes a1, rook takes a1, rook a8, rook takes a8, knight takes a8 to relieve the pressure from black's position. But now comes queen d1, followed up with queen a1, and an unavoidable queenside invasion for white. So bishop g7, queen h4, just eyeing d8, it's important to take note of that. Now bishop f6, bishop g5, it's giving up one advantage to bishop pair for another. After bishop takes g5 and queen takes g5, Fischer writes, now white must penetrate on either the A or D file. Black's e-pawn has clearly been exposed as a weakling. So rook takes a1, because white was threatening rook takes a8, and after knight takes a8, which would be the only reasonable answer because of this pressure on d8 and the threat of queen f6 check if he was to recapture with the queen. But after rook takes a8 and knight takes a8, there's rook d5 with a strong grip on the position and good pressure on e5 and c5. So queen takes g5, rook takes a1, rook takes a1, and knight d7. Fischer writes, apparently defending everything, because rook a7 now can be met with queen d6 and black is okay. But now comes bishop d1, and this is a decisive bishop maneuver. Fischer writes, bringing the bishop into the game puts additional pressure onto black's overburdened pieces. So, knight f6 is how Unzicker played, and not with queen takes e4, because now comes a great move, bishop f3, and queen f4 is forced. If instead queen c2, then rook a7 gives white a winning attack, and the only other square that the queen can go to after bishop f3 is d3, but then rook d1 would win the knight at d7. So queen f4 is forced. But now comes queen takes f4, and after e takes f4, bishop c6, pinning the knight and forcing the rook to defend it. So rook e7, because if instead rook d8, then rook d1, and white wins. So rook e7, but now rook a8 check, king g7, and rook a7, and white wins a piece in the game. So it's a brilliant conception from Fischer, just proving that he doesn't have to worry about defending this pawn because of the tactics that lie in the position if Unzicker was to take it. So knight f6 is what he did play. And then came rook a7, a dangerous rook infiltration to the 7th rank of the black position. And queen d6 from Unzicker. Playing instead knight takes e4 is an outright blunder because of queen h6, and it's forced mate in 2 on h7. So queen d6, bishop e2, because because the bishop's attacked from the queen. And incredibly, black is now too tied up to defend the pawn at b5. With Fischer's prodigious endgame skill, the rest will be a matter of technique after this pawn is lost, and that's indeed how the game went, as you'll see. He gives 4 possible defenses for the pawn at b5 and refutes all of them. Firstly, there's b4, but now comes rook a6. It's attacking the queen here, and knight takes e4, because anything else and black loses a piece. If the queen moves, then the knight is just falling. So knight takes e4 is the correct way to play the position. But now queen h4, threatening the knight and the queen. So queen d5, and bishop f3, queen d3, rook a7, and white wins. It's a winning advantage by miles. So b4 is obviously no good. Another possibility is knight takes e4 to try and keep the material level, but now again comes queen h6, simply forcing mate. So knight takes e4 is no good. Another possibility is queen b6, but now comes the rook f7, threatening the knight. So knight g8, now queen h4, threatening mate on h7, so h6, now queen g4, so threatening queen d7 with a decisive queen penetration, so rook d8. Now bishop takes b5, and again white is winning. There's no queen takes b5 because of queen takes g6, and it's game over for black. And the final method for defending the b pawn after bishop e2 is with rook b8. But now comes the rook f7, knight g8, and rook d7, incredibly. Where best play continues queen f6. If instead queen takes d7, then queen takes e5 check, queen g7, queen takes b8, queen takes c3, queen takes b5, and white retains a winning advantage. So after rook d7, it'd be queen f6, now comes queen e3, queen c6, rook d5, again winning a pawn. Either the e pawn or the c pawn in black's position is gonna fall, and so the game again is lost. So maybe Unzicker considered all of these variations, and maybe he didn't. We'll never know. But in any case, he decided to abandon his b pawn and played instead, after bishop e2, rook e7 to try and neutralize this rook on a 7th rank. And so he's effectively just giving away his b pawn, and Fischer was glad to accept that. With the rook takes e7, and after queen takes e7, bishop takes b5. So now it's up to Unzicker to try and get some initiative going, but there's really nothing for him here in the position. He played king g7, just freeing the movement of the queen, so it's not defended to the it's not tied to the defense of the knight here at f6. And Fischer played bishop e2, and here he wrote, "The win is still far from clear. White's major technical problem is creating a passed pawn on the queen side," here where he's got 2-1, whilst sheltering his king from a perpetual check. So the kind of thing you've always got to watch out for in the endgame. It's happened to me many times. You know, I've got into a winning endgame position, and I've just got carried away thinking I was going to win and allowed my opponent to get perpetual check. So you know, I mean, when you get to grandmaster level, obviously you're considering that kind of stuff constantly, but it's easy to forget when you're at a club level. But anyway, as you'll see here, Fischer gives a great example of how to approach this kind of situation. Unzicker continued with queen c7, which is threatening knight takes e4. It wasn't possible before because the queen would have been hanging. So Fischer answered with queen e3. And after queen a5, played g3, which is just allowing the king to come to g2 if there's queen a1 check. And Unzicker played queen a3, and Fischer thought that queen c7 was a stronger overall move. And he answered with king g2, and wrote that in analysis later he found that sharper and possibly immediately decisive was b4, and after c takes b4, queen c5 where queen takes c3 can be met with queen e7 check, winning the knight. So after queen c5, it's it's still a winning position for white, no matter how black plays. Okay, that's the end of part 2.